The last challenge for the Resident Evil 4 remake I did was pistols only, and that was fun. However, it was pretty easy considering the SG-09R is actually a solid weapon to use, especially when fully upgraded. So I thought to myself, how can I make this more difficult? Sure, increasing the difficulty was always an option, but that didn't seem as fun. So I thought, what's the next worst weapon after the pistol? Can you beat the Resident Evil 4 remake with only the bolt thrower? Now, as for all of these challenge videos, I want to set down a foundation. I'm going to be following the rules for the Minimalist challenge, but swapping out my pistol for the bolt thrower. That means the use of knives, environmental explosives, and any boss weapons are permitted. With that, let's jump straight into the first question you most definitely have. Since you only get the bolt thrower off the merchant in chapter 2, how are you going to complete the first chapter without it? The answer to that is running. Lots and lots of running. There are two main ways to beat the initial village section. Kill enough enemies to make the bell sound off, or avoid enemies for a certain period of time. That period of time was a hell of a lot longer than I thought it would be. It felt like I did 10 laps around the village, especially once the chainsaw guy landed and the tensions rose. I did manage to get myself some loot, including the shotgun to sell later however. After what felt like forever, the bell finally sounded and all the enemies began stumbling away to their Sunday mass session. I kept a silent approach most of the way through the farm area. That is until I burst through a window and alerted everyone in a 10-mile radius. Since I don't have the bolt thrower just yet, my best bet was to fix the gate as quickly as possible, but the cowman had other thoughts. The cowman got what was coming after he stumbled into C4 afterwards. It was clear that I wasn't the best at being silent, so for the next area I continued to run past as many people as I could. I barged into the lakeside cabin, assassinated a Granado, and saved Luis. After getting fucked by our 8-foot hunk friend again, we took our anger out in some Granados, took our items back, and met the most special character of this run, the merchant. Not only is this beautiful man going to sell us the bolt thrower, he's going to upgrade it for us too. I sold all the loot I'd gotten this far to buy the bolt thrower and then upgrade it slightly. I didn't sell the Chicago typewriter or the hand cannon because it just felt wrong. Now I only needed another 6k to buy the bolt recipe from the merchant. With my trusty bolt thrower now at my disposal, I went into the next area fully locked and loaded. Locked and loaded with basically no ammo, and considering the first guy ate 2 bullets and a kick to the chin, I knew this was going to be a tough run. After dispensing most of my ammo into Granado heads relatively quickly, I ran past the rest of the enemies and grabbed some loot and the gate key. With the loot from the previous area, I managed to buy the bolt recipe and craft a few bolts. All of those bolts then went into a chainsaw guy's head, and I might as well just have tickled him. He didn't seem fazed at all. Now, if you don't want Leon to tickle you, then I highly recommend you hit that subscribe button down below so you get notified when I upload in the future. Not only will I be releasing Resident Evil challenge videos, I've got quite a few other games lined up too. I took refuge from the chainsaw guy inside the chief's manor, and our favourite 8-foot hunk wanted another go at Leon. Once I got back outside, I learned a valuable lesson. Don't shoot people unless you know you're going to finish them, because now the chainsaw guy had all of my ammo in his head and was nowhere to be found. After that revelation, I knew I'd need some help, so I freed a cute doggo. That doggo might have been friendly, but the next ones I met in the village certainly weren't. With all of my 0 bullets, I ran. Luckily I met my merchant friend again, sold my loot and upgraded the bolt thrower, so at least now the bolts I do shoot will have more force than a wet paper towel. I managed to craft some bolts, kill a few people, and run past the rest in the next area. After killing what I thought was all of the dogs, I began to shoot a few crows with the remainder of my ammo, just to get a bit extra loot. Turns out there were more dogs than I had bullets. This fight was a bit sketchy after that mistake. At this point I was pretty fed up with having no ammo all the time and having to run past most of the enemies. So I decided to go to the merchant shooting range to see if I could get a few charms for bolt crafting. I've put too many hours into this game already because I managed to get nearly all the tokens in my first go on each challenge. After using 6 gold tokens and 12 silver tokens, I managed to get nothing. Absolutely nothing. 5% off weapon upgrades was the best thing I got. I was pretty mad at this. With no bonus ammo, I used the 4 bolts that I had to navigate the fish farm, get some petrol, and then hop on a boat. At least a harpoon has unlimited ammo, so I killed Mr. Fishy.
Fishy! Wake up!
Chapter 4 is where things are finally starting to look up. I met the penis head enemy and pumped 8 bolts into him. I then took out his friend, which left me with 5 bolts. This ammo expenditure was about to change, however, because after selling all my loot, weapons, and gold eggs to the merchant, not only did I fully upgrade the bolt thrower, I also managed to get the attachable mines. The attachable mines will be what finally turns the tides. I no longer have to be afraid of enemies with explosives at my fingertips. I popped a few heads off here and there, stole a few heads here and there, and then managed to get the church key. With my explosives, I felt pretty damn powerful, but I knew things were about to change when I get back inside the quarry and have to face El Gigante. I crafted as much ammo as I could, and in I went. El Gigante managed to eat 4 explosive bolts before Doggo came to my aid. He then proceeded to eat the rest of my normal bolts, depleting my ammo. At this point I was pretty sure he had less than 10% health remaining, so with no resources or bolts left, I went in for the kill. If it hadn't been for the Doggo and explosive bolts in this area, it would have been a lot harder. After El Gigante had fallen, I made my way back to the church, avoided the Doggo, solved the puzzle, and rescued our damsel in distress. You know, I've been able to run around like a headless chicken for most of this run so far, not worrying too much about getting hit or grabbed. But since I've got Baby Eagle by my side now, I feel like things are about to get a lot harder. And oh, was I right. After expending my ammo, Ashley and I made a dash to the bottom of the graveyard, doing our best not to end up buried in it. Knowing that we didn't have a bolt between us, Ashley and I decided to sneak our way through the farm to Louise's mansion, which went well for the most part. In this section, ammo normally isn't an issue for most runs because Louise has endless pockets filled with all the ammo you could ever dream of, for pistols. Luis doesn't seem to understand that his pistol bullets won't fit inside of my bolt thrower, unfortunately. I had to use my knife to kill the first wave of enemies to loot them and get a few bolts inside of my gun. This worked and I even managed to craft some. Since this area was so small, it was pretty easy to kill all the enemies and retrieve my bolts. I made sure not to use any explosives until the cowman came through. The cowman managed to eat 4 explosives before Ashley came to the rescue and we finally made it out. Ashley and I assassinated a Granado, watched a clumsy Granado trip, then blew up the remaining Granados. These explosive bolts really do destroy them. I used my knife to fight 2 girls with chainsaws and then got chased by our 8-foot hunk friend and a mob of Granados. It was only after talking to the merchant that I realized where I was and what I had. I was in the boss fight area and had no ammo. Like at all. Not a single bolt to my name. Luckily we found some resources in the barn and managed to craft explosive bolts. It seems our 8-foot friend is allergic to these because after shooting a few of them into his third eye, he went into his second phase. The first phase was pretty easy. The second one, not so much. The bolt thrower's bolts have such a long travel time in the air, so the further away a target is, the harder they are to hit. Since this guy jumped back 20 foot, he was extremely hard to hit. I used most of my ammo when he was up close or when he was holding explosive barrels. I did quite a bit of damage up until I had only 1 bullet left. If I shoot the barrels one more time, it should just about kill him. Please don't miss. I missed. Guess it's knifey time. This guy took a lot more bolts than I thought he would, and even more heals. I think I used 4 heals during that entire fight. Ammo won't be an issue anymore, however, because our merchant friend is stocked up on an endless supply of large resources. All I need now is to find some knives to craft more. I killed a new enemy with our bolts. I think. I'm not actually sure if he's dead or just glitched out. I also killed Ashley. Turns out she takes explosive damage. Who would have thought? Once inside the castle, my ammo really started picking up. I even managed to take down a berserker without breaking a sweat. I did break a sweat in the next area, protecting Ashley though, because as I mentioned, shooting enemies at a distance is extremely tough with the bolt thrower. I missed so many shots here and we barely made it out alive. I was getting confident with my trusty little bolt thrower now though, and even in the room with the crimson flame, I didn't bother going in silently. I killed quite a few enemies in this room and even managed to get out with a good bit of ammo remaining. I fought my way across the castle ramparts, killing most enemies in my path and only running from a few. I took out the troll with the cannon, opened the door, and then found Ashley.
Open the door!
Ashley and I made our way through the maze, and I knew this was going to be tough before I got in because those doggos are extremely fast. Not only are they extremely fast, but it currently takes Leon 5 business days to aim the bolt thrower. After putting some good boys down, I asked the lovely merchant man if he could upgrade my bolt thrower fully for me, and he obliged, for about 100 grand. I'm greedy though, so a fully upgraded bolt thrower wasn't enough. I had to get charms. This time I came out with a plus 20% bolt ammo craft bonus, which was better than nothing I guess. It only took 9 chapters, but I was finally feeling the power of the bolt thrower. Even the guys in armor didn't stand a chance. As soon as I felt the bolt thrower's power, however, it was taken from me, and I became a woman again. I skipped through most of Ashley's section by remembering the time on the clock and then saved Leon. With the bolt thrower back in our hands, we could test out its full potential on 2 berserkers, who really didn't seem to care about me until I killed all other enemies. I ended up losing half of my ammo between the walls somehow, but the fight was pretty easy nonetheless. The next section with Salazar's right-hand man wasn't as straightforward, however. Sure, I managed to destroy him in the first phase with 4 explosive bolts, but then he just kept eating the rest and my ammo was running pretty dry. I managed to kick him down almost every time he was frozen and didn't miss a single shot in him. This was a tight one because I finally finished him off with just 2 bolts remaining. Then I celebrated, of course. Underground with Luis, Leon got mad at the air and tried to assassinate it. He couldn't risk this public humiliation getting out of the tunnels, so he decided to kill everyone in the vicinity. Not even a chainsaw was left running by the end of it. I started the troll fight off with 24 bolts and 5 explosive tips. Normally one troll focuses on Leon at the start, giving you time to take it down, but it seemed like both of them had a thing for Leon this time, and they fucked me up pretty good. After stunning one of the trolls, I managed to use the lava pit for the first time and drop him into it. This wasn't the smartest move, I realized, since he took all of my bolts with him. Knowing this, I couldn't drop the second one for fear of losing my bolts on him too. After Luis strapped dynamite to his back, he wasn't too difficult to take down. In the end, I finished both trolls with 19 bullets remaining. Not a bad fight. Luis and I went on a thrill ride and I was forced to use a red 9 as per the last challenge. Luis met his demise in the form of Krauser, and then Krauser met his demise in the form of Luis. Rest in peace, Don Quixote. After leaving our brother to rest, we finally made it to Salazar's castle to exact revenge. Salazar's tower had lots of enemies. I mean, hundreds of them. It was completely pointless to try fight them all, so I made my way to the elevator as quickly as possible. My strategy on the elevator was to dodge the incoming arrows as best as I could and use explosive bolts to do area of effect damage to all enemies, making them fall off. After missing every single bolt on the snipers outside, I stood outside Salazar's boss fight with 19 bolts and 12 explosive tips in total. Still a decent amount. My strategy for this fight was to get as many explosive bolts into his face as possible. I shot one as soon as I started a fight and followed up with a knife attack. Turns out the explosive bolts stun him quite a bit and you can get a couple in a row into him. I did my best to stab his eye each time he went down, and after only 10 explosive bolts, Salazar was no more. I ended this fight with 9 bolts remaining. It was that easy I didn't even celebrate and teabag him. After ending Salazar's reign, we landed at the factory. The enemies here are a good bit tougher than before. Since I didn't have the few hundred bullets I needed to kill everybody, I decided to run past most of them in the first area. I taunted a man inside the factory so that he cleared the way for me, killed a cowman, and then killed a human torch, Skyrim style. I've been dreading regenerados for most of this because I don't think the bolts would do as much damage as bullets would do to them. And I was right. Even the explosive bolts don't blow their skin off enough to hit their weak spot. It took quite a few explosive bolts to get through their skin, and even then I wasn't always shooting the right place. I couldn't even put the bioscanner on the bolt gun. I tried to take the section with 4 regenerados easy and slowly. I let the first one out gently with my arrows, then, like the idiot I am, I swapped to my explosives and let them all out. At this point I had given up on the bolt thrower and decided to swing my knife at them in hopes that I hit a weak spot. This worked surprisingly well, even if it took me a large number of heals. After that insane encounter, I locked myself in Ashley's cell and went to sleep. Chapter 14 is where Miley Cyrus makes her debut in this game. I had a grand total of 41 bolts and 8 explosive tips to start this fight. Sure, there are a lot of enemies in this area, and if you asked me before I started this challenge if it was possible to kill them all with a bolt thrower, I'd say there was no way. But between the explosive tips, my accurate headshots, and Leon's powerful feet, we did manage to do it. As fun as that fight was, I want a more challenging fight, so I decided to ask Krauser if he wanted to play. My strategy for this was to use as many explosive bolts at the start as I could to get him through his phases. I figured if I used normal bolts they would just get lost by the end as he goes through multiple phases. His first phase was easy. A few well placed explosive bolts took his hat off and made him run. The second phase, as usual, wasn't as easy. This took quite a few explosive bolts and heals. Luckily, with the delay of the explosive bolts, nearly every time he grabbed me he was interrupted by the detonation of the bolt. After pumping 9 explosive bolts into him, I finished him off with a bolt straight to the dome. I ended this fight with 1 explosive tip and 44 bolts remaining. That's gotta be plenty for Sadler later. Or so I thought. That was until every Granado and their mother came out to greet Mike and his chopper. This area used quite a few bolts since a lot of enemies were far away and I'm pretty bent. Mike was chased off by an anti-air gun and I had a great idea. Could I use my explosives on the anti-air gun instead of going all the way up to the top? Even though they're proximity bolts, turns out I can. After taking out the air gun, a Granado risked his life for me. Rest easy, my angel. You know, I was all happy with myself in the last section for finishing Krauser with 44 bolts remaining. Well, I look pretty stupid now because this area with Mike covering me took so many bullets. I retrieved as many as I could from the enemies I killed, but still ended up with only 17 by the end of it. I still had full faith in my little bolt thrower, so after saving Ashley, I began preparing. I crafted 12 explosive tips for my 13 bolts, enough to kill Sadler, I hope. As soon as the fight began, I managed to get an explosive tip into his leg and then hit the explosive barrel beside him to blow all of his weak spots up. Once he fell, I put my new fighting blade inside of his eye and jumped down a level. My next few shots must have been extremely well placed because 1 explosive bolt managed to break 2 of his weak spots. Twice. This downed him again and I gave him another taste of my blade. The next section confused me when I didn't shoot him, but he went down for a 3rd time and the cutscene played. Turns out his second phase is time based and doesn't matter if you hit him or not. Thanks to you guys for letting me know about this one. This was all too well because I only had 2 bullets left during his final phase. They didn't do any damage as expected, so I put a rocket inside of him. It was finally over. Now all we had to do was escape. So, did I beat Resident Evil 4 Remake with only the bolt thrower? Similar to my last challenge, yes and no. There are certain weapons that you simply have to use, the Red 9, the Harpoon, and the rocket launcher for example. But if we're going with the rules I set out at the start of the video, then yeah, I think I did. This challenge was the most fun so far. The first few chapters took off extremely slowly with the lack of ammo and running, but once I had the resources and a fully upgraded bolt thrower, it got fun really fast. I feel a lot better using this weapon than before I started, although I know I still can't hit long range shots with it. That concludes this challenge of beating the Resident Evil 4 Remake with only the bolt thrower. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I appreciate all the support in the last video. It really means a lot to me to know that you guys enjoyed it. If you guys enjoyed this video, then drop a like down below and subscribe to get notified when I release future content. Thank you all very much for watching. Until next time. You know, the Resident Evil 4 Remake has 22 weapons in total, some of which are pretty cool and unique. You've got the shotguns for large hordes and big enemies, the rifles for collats and 360 no-scopes, and even the revolvers that can one-shot bosses when fully upgraded. But what if we put all of those in the trash? Can you beat the Resident Evil 4 Remake?